Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Stockbridge Library's online poetry series. Our theme this season is Sparks in the Dark, and our conversation will touch on the ideas that are ignited and the power of poetry to spark ideas and inspire us. We are lucky to have with us today Ellen Steinbaum. She's the author of 4 poetry collections as well as a one-person play. Her work has been nominated twice for a Pushcart Prize and is included in several anthologies, including The Widow's Handbook and a book I really love, Garrison Keillor's Good Poems, American Places. She's an award-winning journalist, former columnist for the Boston Globe, and we are very lucky and delighted to have you with us here today, Ellen. And I also want to introduce John Gillespie before we turn the program over to John and to Ellen. John, at the onset of the pandemic, John was the president of the board of trustees here at the Stockbridge Library Association, and he had this incredible idea to bring poetry into our homes when none of us could leave our homes. And here we are now in 2023 and still bringing poetry into people's homes each week. So we're very grateful to John for that and very proud of this gathering of poets. So thank you all for joining us, and I will turn the program over to you, John, and to you, Ellen.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy, and thank you for Stockbridge Library for hosting. So Ellen, hopefully this isn't, it's probably showing my age, but I've been reading the Boston Globe for 65 years. Yeah. Yeah, that was the Bible, the sports page Bible when I was 8 years old, fighting with my brother about who could race to the front door and out to the sidewalk to get the Globe. Yeah, that's how it started. No, I still love the Globe sports page. It's, yeah.
I never wrote for the sports page.
What's that? Yeah.
You will
Of course,
not
none of the writers are
surprised
around
about
anymore. None of the writers are around. They're all, yeah, I mean, Shaughnessy's still around. He's been around for, yeah. But yeah, nah, still enjoy it, but a lot of other newspapers too. So Ellen, thanks for being on our program again.
Well, thank you so
Think
much.
about Sparks in the Dark. What's that?
I'm just saying thank you to you and Wendy both for inviting me back again.
Yeah. What is, Sparks in the Dark? What was your take on our theme this year and the power of poetry to move us?
Well, I really loved it, particularly since I had picked out of the several dates that you had offered, December 6th, not realizing until just recently that it was so close to a time when the day is getting darker and darker and, reaching its most dark. And of course, Sparks in the Dark also reminds us of the world we're living in and how every day is bringing us increased darkness. And I think poetry is one of the ways, an important way for me personally, for reaching out and trying to alleviate some of that darkness and trying to find the spark of light, a few sparks of light that can help us kind of brighten that darkness a little bit. So I hope that's a little of what I'm bringing you today. If you want me to start, I'll start with.
Yeah, start. Yeah,
start with this is kind of an old poem. This is my second.
Yeah, please start.
And it was written about an advertising display that I used to see in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where I would visit my grandmother and we would walk together on the boardwalk. And somehow this felt to me like bringing light into the darkness. It was the world, the whole world, hanging large and red over the boardwalk, lights blinking their way down its curve. Sherwin-Williams paints cover the earth. Cover the earth in glittering lights, in magic, blinking childhood lights, a kind of Sherwin-Williams grace, a Sherwin-Williams blessedness, blinking down the curve of the world, blinking down to cover the earth. Cover the earth in blinking lights, in fine white sand, in blue white sand crabs, sofa cushions, outdoor concerts. Cover the earth in rainy mornings, hot soup, heavy quilts, scent of geranium leaves, ripe pears sliced on flowered china plates, charms candy in my grandmother's handbag, the war over and my father coming home. And all the brilliant, shimmering colors, emerald, scarlet, midnight blue, vermilion, topaz, saffron, every color pouring out to cover the earth. In flowers, the drawings of children, pied horses, Bengal tigers, giant redwoods, sparkling fish. Cover the earth. Cover the earth.
Very nice.
Thanks. I was also thinking of, while we're covering the earth, there's also a lot of uncertainty in that. And this is a poem that talks about that kind of uncertainty. It was actually based on something I heard from someone I had met. The boat from Irian Jaya. And I should mention these place names are all in Southeast Asia. The boat from Irian Jaya never came. If it had, he would not have taken the flight to Kuching, where he met the man who spoke to him of Langkawi, where he saw the photograph that drew him to our star, where he met the woman who came home with him to Boston, where they bought the house, where they raised the children who would have been different children in a different house if the boat from Irian Jaya had arrived. So I was recently introduced to the work of a poet I had never heard of before, Hilda Domine. And so I was thinking of her in relation to the Sparks of Light. She was a poet born in Germany, then forced to leave because she and her husband were both Jews. And she returned to Germany in 1951 and became the voice of German reconciliation. And only this year are there translations available in English, thanks to the work of 2 translators. And she speaks of miracles, which she sees as kind of any act, no matter how small, that connects one person to another and affirms the humanity of one person to another in dealing with each other. And I wanted to read in each translation this teeny poem that is one of her most iconic and most popular. So in the translation by Mark Burrows of her work, it's called Don't Grow Weary. Don't grow weary, but hold your hand out quietly to the miracle as if to a bird. And in the translation by Sarah Kafatu, it is not to tire, not to tire, but to hold out your hand gently as to a bird to the miracle. So those are
And how did you run across her? How did you find out about her?
I was asked to host a program for an organization I belong to, where these two poets, these two translators were both. It was funny. Hilda Domin's poems, as I said, have not been available in English before, and these two translators, not known to each other, were each working on this for a number of years, and their books were published on the same day this past April. So that's a spark of life into it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I'd like to read to you three relatively new poems, starting with one that is brand new. What I am afraid of is that after you lit monuments in my colors, and after you wept along with me, that now when you open your good heart to mourn for all the children, you do not mean mine.
Wow. Yes.
Hatch. Last week, we watched the Audubon volunteers dig for hatchlings on the edge of salt marsh, feel out small blobs of sand, wash them off, reveal the baby turtles, diamondback terrapins, some with egg shards still attached. 10, 12, 18 busy siblings plopped in a box exploring. We could not tear ourselves away, took and sent photos, videos, lingered to watch more new arrivals who, sturdy and not noticing us, set forth into a world of hungry foxes, herons, crows. We think about them now, look at the pictures, hope against the odds they've all survived, though knowing too if we'd been charmed instead by hatching crows or herons or newborn foxes, we'd be rooting for the eaters, not the eaten.
Hey, Alan, 1 second. Can everyone that's not muted please mute? Just because Ellen speaks a little bit softly, and people with open mics just keep pushing into the Ellen's talk. So if you could mute yourself, and that'd help us out.
Okay, and
Yeah.
I'll try and
Thank
speak a
you.
little more loudly than that. Belonging. The second time I saw the mouse, I was merely startled as it skittered across the floor and disappeared behind a chair, hurrying as if it had entered our home by accident and was sorry for intruding. It was tiny, round, a wind-up toy mouse, a Beatrix Potter mouse, like a pet I didn't know I had. We bought a gadget that emits a sound we can't hear, designed to persuade our mouse to self-deport. Our mouse. Not like when I saw the shockingly large hole in the garden, the pile of excavated dirt beside it, and could not summon slaughter fast enough at just the thought of the large, dark body and horrifying tail. Instinct is quick to order, assign rank, rat or mouse, caterpillar, worm, graceful dragonfly on painted melon, or scuttling roach in kitchen cabinet, what we tolerate or banish, what charms and what disgusts, what trespasses, what is allowed to build a fence around its space and name it home.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. So are you pulling together a book to publish, or?
Funny you should ask. I think almost all, maybe all the poems that I'm reading this morning, with the exception of the couple old ones I started with, are part of a new manuscript that is hoping to find a home at some point. This
Is it
is
easy to find a home? Is it easy to find a home nowadays, or is that a
no,
bigger
no,
challenge?
no, not at all. And I see Lloyd shaking his head in agreement. No, no, no. But, we'll see. I'll let you know. This is a story that is a family story that in past readings I've done here, there have been two first cousins of mine who've been on, and they're not here today, but I was wondering if they've heard different versions of this. Anyhow, in the story I heard, they were infants, children of old friends, betrothed before they could walk. Betrothed before they could walk the land that was then still the czar's. In the story I heard, they met and she refused him, pale, thin scholar, then fell ill, recovered only after the promise was renewed. And then the story pauses, and we know only that after decades, children, long journey, new language, here on silent film, grandchildren crowd around them as they lean toward one another. And though we hear no words, we see them smile in slightly bewildered surprise.
I like that, betrothed before they can walk. Yeah.
Betrothed as infants, and then as the poem said, she became sick when she broke the engagement. She took one walk and said no, and so then she became ill, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, and so the rabbi said she has committed maybe some kind of sin, and they're looking at her and saying, this young girl, what kind of sin could she have committed? Maybe that broken promise. And they renewed the engagement, and she recovered, and they got married. And this was inspired by a very grainy piece of silent film that was taken in, I think, 1936.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
One of the things I've been thinking about in terms of darkness is how divided our world, but particularly our country, feels right now. And so this is a poem that I wrote about a time when it felt like we were much more together. And I was really surprised to realize when I looked just this morning to check on this, this happened in 1987, which seems to somebody old like me pretty recent, when baby Jessica fell down the well. You remember? Oh, I see some looks of recognition. When baby Jessica fell down the well, the whole country stopped and held its breath, prayed for rescue that took 56 hours while Jessica sang about Winnie the Pooh. Do you remember this? She was 18 months old, and it was 1987, and everyone wished they could help. Everyone watched. Everyone waited.
Yeah.
I wonder whether there's a moment, unless it was a very tragic public moment, whether there is any kind of moment now that could feel like that, where we're all not in a tragic sense, but all just hoping for something good to happen.
No, that's a great wish. That's a great wish. It's at times it seems it's
Maybe
so daunting. It's almost impossible. Yeah.
Maybe when the Thai miners were rescued, but then I don't think the whole world was watching the same way. Maybe where was that soccer team? Was that the boys on the soccer team that got rescued from a cave or something?
Yeah.
Now I can't think of
I don't
where.
know. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyhow, John, a lot of the poems that I have read in this series for you, a lot of the poems I've written have been inspired by works of visual art, by photographs, by some sculptures, by paintings, and this is one that was inspired by a painting by Claes Moyart, and I'm not sure. In fact, I am sure I am not pronouncing that correctly. A Dutch painter in 1633. I have a great love for 17th century Dutch paintings, but I don't have a great ability to pronounce all the names of the wonderful painters. And this is Esau selling his birthright to Jacob. The pleader's back is to us. We cannot see the face, the hunger, and the eyes fixed on the bowl. What we can see is Jacob's smooth hand moving closer to the bowl, while Esau grabs it in both hairy hands and pulls it to himself. And even if we didn't know, we'd know this transaction is not likely to end well. Even the watchful dog, a smooth, non-biblical looking hound, seems worried, edges his nose up to the table, pointed face urging reconsideration, while the other dog looks as though he's wondering what's the harm in reaching out a hand and angling for blessing.
Very nice.
You.
So do you take regular trips to, see visual things to spark your poetry?
Absolutely. I just came back from a wonderful trip to New York where my husband, Jim Dalsimer, in one of those little rectangles, where we saw the Matisse and the Degas and Manet exhibit at the Met, which is huge, but they're doing a really great job of crowd control, which doesn't often happen in a museum. And I'm kind of height challenged. And so I'm usually kind of peering around the heads of people and the shoulders of people. And you came into the museum with your phone and they said, you get this text message, do you want to join the virtual line? And then they send you a text message when it's your turn to show up. And they didn't admit too many people at the same time. So we were very lucky. Do you
Nice.
go, John?
I haven't, we've gone to the Portland Museum of Art. We go to some, what's the place up in, here's one of the great American, I'm trying to think of it. It's like Father, Son, Jamie, whatever.
Oh,
Those
the
three.
Wyeths.
Yeah, the Wyeths. There's a Wyeth Museum up in Rockport or Rock. Yeah, so we've gone there with friends. And yeah, it's just amazing to see what people create.
Well, if
And
you're talking about the Wyeths, I have to give
yeah,
a shout out.
yeah, and they had a lot of
Just
backstories. They had,
not
yeah.
only to Rockport, but to Chadsford, Pennsylvania, which is near where I grew up, Wilmington, Delaware, and they were from Chadsford.
Yeah, and they had a story of the Wyeth caretaker. They had some, and so they intertwined some little story boxes next to the painting to describe what I think the person who was caretaker was there for like 30 or 40 years.
Wow.
All through his painting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they've certainly, I'm trying to think. I thought that maybe I had a poem in my distant past that was inspired by a Wyeth painting, but now I can't think of it. Yeah.
Well,
Anyhow,
Ellen, let's do this. We
yeah,
we have I don't know if we did this the last time.
yeah.
Have a little break at the halftime part
Okay.
where the attendees, the guests, can ask some questions and or give you some comments. I think it's always good, kind of give you a little uh, time to not be performing and to uh, answer some questions. So anybody who has one, I mean, Kathy, obviously you're due for like 3 or 4 questions. Only kidding. If anybody has a question, just unmute and ask Ellen.
Okay.
No, it's pretty quiet.
All
Well,
right.
Ellen, I used to say, oh yeah, good, Lloyd, good. Don't let the poet off easy. Come on.
No, something I've never asked Ellen was who were you reading? What poets were you reading when you were growing up that got you interested?
I had a wonderful English teacher in high school who gave our class a very wide look into in same teacher in 11th grade British literature, in 12th grade American literature, and I mean, I think of somebody even like Edgar Allan Poe as a poet with that wonderful rhythm can ever dissever my soul from the soul. I mean, and that may be because I spent summers a lot in Atlantic City, so the ocean and rhythm. But then I didn't start writing poetry until I was like in my late 30s, early 40s. And I had been writing nonfiction, like magazine and newspaper articles. But I think that the poets I had read, like, I mean, obviously Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman, and what I've heard is that all American poets either are, drawn to one or the other of those, and I guess I would be in the Walt Whitman category. But everything I read kind of was for reading, not for inspiring me to write. It felt like a different world that I couldn't touch. And the first poet whose work spoke to me and kind of gave me this sense that maybe I could also write poetry, was Linda Paston, whom I later had the great pleasure and honor to be able to call friend. It was funny, I was going down to the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts for a fellowship, and I was driving, and I decided, with great trembling and kind of screwing up all my courage, to send her a little note and say, I'm passing through Washington. Could I take you to coffee or lunch? And she said, I'm very embarrassed to say this, but I have to leave in a few days to go do some readings. And I have a dog that will only eat if I sit next to him. And so I can't leave the house. I'm trying to train him to eat without me. So I can't go anyplace, but you come to my house. And so I did, and it was very lovely. And she had a reason to be in Boston once a year. So after that, we would meet regularly. But that, I mean, her poetry is very much based on what she encountered in her everyday life. And that inspired me to think that maybe what I was doing somehow approached poetry. So
Great.
long answer, Lloyd, but
Oh, fantastic.
Lloyd,
Wonderful.
who were your who was there anybody like that for you, Lloyd?
Well, my high school English teacher, I had no thought, senior year, had no real interest in poetry at all. And this was someone who would just do anything to get the students interested in poetry. And excuse me, I remember we read Frost and Keats and Shakespeare. And then I just fell in love with poetry. And I didn't think I could ever write any. But in college, I joined the literary magazine and really started to write then. But yeah, Frost and Keats were the
Right.
were the real initial inspirations.
English teachers.
My
I have a,
my just a footnote. My teacher looked like Groucho Marx and was totally uninhibited about how he, worked with students. His son wrote the first biography of Groucho Marx.
crazy.
So
Well, I
Oh, boy.
think that my whole class it was so enamored of this and so grateful to this teacher. I always think that probably, all 25 or however many of us probably have the same answer when we're asked to do a password and, favorite teacher's name.
Oh,
I have a question.
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
Hi. I loved the poem about the mouse. And what I loved about it is how you moved from something so
Disgusting.
domestic and so small to such a universal issue of how we categorize and build fences and things. That to me is the genius of a lot of what you do. And I'm curious whether it just comes to you or you strive for that and look for that kind of
I
imagery.
definitely strive for genius, Susie. Yes. And I even have a love poem that's about cockroaches, which I
I've
wish
read that
was not in
thing.
the other room right now. But anyhow, I don't know. I mean, I had a wonderful poetry teacher. When I moved to Boston, I was just beginning to write poetry, and I sort of didn't know how to look at what the first draft was and edit it and think about how to make it better. And I had this teacher who was just up the street from me, a Tony Riccio, known as Ricky. And he was also always saying, like, listen to what the poem wants to say and listen to what it wants to be. And so I guess I just try and follow it along. And
Gosh,
yeah, I'm sometimes surprised at where it does take me, the rats. And I'm sitting in a room right now where I can picture where the mouse used to run. And I always think of mouse singular because it horrified me to think of plural. Anyhow, and that gadget that's in the poem that we bought, and it didn't do anything, but we hired somebody for a lot of money to close up every single nook and cranny and like all the spaces around light, electrical outlets and things. So that kept the mouse out.
Mouse.
Mouse.
Well,
Same.
let's get back to the poetry. It's great
Okay.
for sharing your stories.
Okay. Well, let me just see. In terms of sparks in the dark, in the Jewish tradition, there is this moment of Havdalah, which is the end of the Sabbath, and it separates the Sabbath from the rest of the week. And so it's kind of the sparks in the dark moment, because it's, you know, after at the end of Sabbath. So this is called Havdalah prayer. As the sky darkens, as the moon appears, let the softness stay. Make me like a pear. Let me never harden against touch, even if I bruise. Send me out into the dusk, tender, undefended, scented flesh and juice, carrying the seed, sweet and secret flame. And then just as I'm reading this, I'm seeing on the facing page, this is a poem that I wrote after the funeral of a wonderful young man who died in a terrible accident, very, very young. And yesterday, the damp earth smell rising around us, we mounded up the ground, breaking the hard clods with our fingers to sift them gently down. How you would have loved that all our backs bore muddy evidence of hugging. Today we wake alone, resume irrelevant breathing, recognizing even the best end badly, leaving, being left, the difference merely temporary. Lemmings, we run to what destroys us, condemned to give our hearts to what is mortal. We guard ourselves, hunch-shouldered against the heavy sunlight, hardwired to crave the touch that burns us every time. The choice resting in our own wounded arms, hold back, we dry and shrivel. Embrace, we are undone. That connection between people, I think, is what brings us the sparks of light. I mean, how else are we going to light up the darkness but with the connections that we can make with one another? As it gets, as we get all the dark news into our rooms every morning, and as we face darkness at 3:30 and 4 o'clock every day.
Yeah, there should be a newspaper that just has the light news, the shining light news. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if it's sustainable, but
you talk about the Boston Globe. I think
yeah.
they once have some kind of slogan about bringing good news to people, or some kind of, until they realized that as a newspaper, they kind of had a mission to bring actual news, not just the good stuff.
Yeah.
This is a recipe that, looking at the first line, this is a poem that takes place in September, but I think it still has things to say to us in December. September. Spattered recipes line the kitchen counter. I roll bits of dough smooth between my palms, drop them into bubbling gingered honey. The birthday of the world returns. We wait to be inscribed for life, for death, by strangling, by stoning, by fire, by water. The children wear new shoes. Their notebook pages are blank. Beneath the warm air, sweet with apples, the faint chill breathes. and waits. The sky is clear, a shining blue, clear and innocent beyond naming, as we move through calendar turns of ruined temples, vapored cities in time, as well of births and weddings, miracles, horrors in relentless patchwork. On one September day, we watched the sky darken with smoke and the slow motion folding down to dust. In a different year, I drink strong coffee at the kitchen window, my face turned to the sun, while elsewhere waters fall and rise as if the world will start again. I mound the honeyed pieces on my mother's cut glass platter, mark private harvests and losses on the page. Red flames into ruby, green deepens to emerald, turning in jeweled preparation for white sleep, while September gathers us in without mercy, breaks us open once again.
All great visual images. Yeah.
This is called coffee. I have a particular passion for Turkish coffee. And so this is inspired by that coffee. I measure out the spoon of sugar, scoop of powder, silken as breath, stir the mixture on the stove, its thick smell already rising. I am making coffee in my new pot that is either an ibrik or an imrik. I may be making serge or kave in a sejva or a jezva. Hard to say. The choreography is precise, identical, no matter what the tongue, boiling to the top 3 times the charm, careful not to let it boil over. This sweet and bitter drink with many names, with none. This perfect cup owned by each armed square of land holds the scent of scimitars and cardamom, dust and blood. Turkish, Armenian, Turkish. Minefield of an order could as well be Arab and Israeli, English and Irish, Bosnian and Serb, Moabite and Midianite. You can read your fortune in the grounds. It's a little too close to home to today's news. So maybe we need to comfort ourselves with some hot coffee.
Coffee, coffee, coffee.
Yeah. A number of years ago, I was in France, in Normandy, at the 50th anniversary of D-Day. It was just before the 50th anniversary, and we wanted to go, and yet we thought, oh, it's going to be so crowded. This is ridiculous, and it wasn't crowded at all, and because it was a few days before. But what we saw was preparations, and from a lot of the houses, people that hung sheets where they had written, "Welcome to our liberators." And so I wrote this after that trip. Norman Conquest. See on the granite column, the names and ranks are carved on all 4 sides, and at its base, a small bouquet lies wet in rain, just like the rain of 60 years ago. Take care. The grass is slick with rain and sea mist. The hill is steep and rocky. Everywhere you step, someone has died. And you think it rained the day 900 years ago when William left this hilly coast to conquer? The tapestry unfolds with the daring rush of eager men and horses. And see now, the sun is out. The raindrops steam up to the sky. It may rain again tomorrow.
Really nice.
This is one that reminds me of the feeling of that people talk about of September 12th, which was the day after, when everyone felt this fragility, but also this kind of tenderness with each other, and just people being kind to one another. Except, of course, the Muslims who were then, being, hated, and I guess it never is. It's always like this. Iceman. And this was, it started in a memory of a prehistoric body that was discovered in, I think, in the Alps. So another example of, you kind of never know where the poem is going. Iceman. He may have bled to death there on the mountain. Flint arrowhead embedded in carbon-dated shoulder blade. Neolithic agony echoing down to us through tectonic shifts. His computer image looking like someone I might have met. I thought of him again, I don't know why, on a warm afternoon later that September. The streets were hushed and shadowy, although the sky, of course, was emptier, bluer, too, than necessary. The scent still in the air and flowers wilting outside the fire stations. Posters in every window, one might yet come home. In another age, a week before, we had owned small fears, certainty. We were young then.
All right. Nice. Very touching. The day after.
Yeah. You remember that moment of
Yeah, I was in the World Trade Center the week before at a breakfast. And yeah, we lived in Cranford, New Jersey, across the river. So yeah, we had a friend who was in one of the towers that managed to walk down from the 44th floor and escape. Yeah. But it was now it's yeah, just now it's never to be forgotten.
Yeah. This is called When the Mariposas Come. This is about the monarch butterfly migrations. When the mariposas come, they turn the air to beating flame. So many you can hear them. So many that together, each the weight of a hair. They bend the branches of the oyamel trees in the cool, high forests. It is the Day of the Dead when they arrive. Nearly spring when they cascade down from the trees, begin the journey north. 4, 5 generations die and are born along the way. Ride on thermal drafts and stars, return to where they've never been. When our cousin Eliana found us in her online search, we were in Boston, Palo Alto, Washington, New York, unaware of her in Rio, Edgar in Moscow, Valentin in Tel Aviv, but still carrying the impulse for ingathering, quick to knit continents together, though lacking bread and bone direction. The old names circle back. We clutch our half-remembered phrases, names of towns, draw diagrams our children may yet read. We have forgotten words and tune, but still the rhythm runs unbidden in our veins. Actually, that brings me to another poem called Leavings, which is, at the moment, I think, the title poem of the unhoused, so far unhoused collection. And this was inspired by cleaning out the drawers and the, collections of stuff and all the, Claire, I know you have tablecloths, I have tablecloths, the gloves, just all these things that have been left to us or that we have collected so carefully over the years. And there's this sense of what are we going to do with them and who is going to want them? And anyhow, leavings, who will want them? What to do with them? The photographs are easy. Boxes, give out duplicates, toss extras. Then the birthday cards and scribbled notes and letters home from camp. But what about all those perfect leather gloves waiting unworn in their patient pairs? Tablecloths folded and ready for hungry gathering around. And thimbles, buttons, hooks and eyes, Dorcas dressmakers, steel pins in a round embellished tin they don't make anymore. And spools of thread, J&P coats, mercerized cotton, John Wanamaker, 30 cents. A personal museum of things, relics made or touched by hands I've known. I mean,
All these memories. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, when you talk about the sparks in the dark, it's the fact that these things have been handled by people I've known and loved who are no longer in the world. And they just looking at them, bring the sparks back into the world.
Sounds like you found sparks. You find sparks everywhere.
Just the way I find all those pairs of gloves. So, John, I think we're edging toward our ending time.
Yeah, we have about 5 more minutes. So if you want to read one more poem.
Well, actually, I want to read 2 more if I've got time.
Yeah, 2 more is great. 2 more is great. Yeah.
This is about our kind of connections in the world. What happiness is. The back of the jacket on the woman ahead of me in the supermarket line says Dropkick Murphys, the band that opened for the one his son played percussion for. So I get out a pen, jot down a reminder to take home, the way he sometimes sends me an email from 2 rooms away with a story someone told in his Zoom class or something remarkable he read. Each of us polishing our meager presence the way a cat might leave a limp gift on the pillow. Going back to the mouse theme again. And this is, I often want to leave with sort of a benediction to send us back into the world. So this will be my benediction, I guess, for the day. The intervening day, we call it, the day between his birthday and our anniversary, between the beginning of his days and the formal beginning of our days together. Between these 2 occasions were cards and cakes, good wishes, celebrations, this one day that has no ritual, just an everyday day, a day we notice perhaps only because it sits sandwiched between the 2 momentous ones, a day when nothing further is required than our simple gratitude for one more ordinary day.
Fantastic. Wow.
Thank you.
Ellen, thank you so much. Thank you so much
Thank you
for
so much, John and Wendy. Thanks for this opportunity again. And thank you for everybody online. I love seeing your smiling faces here.
Yeah, I think no one left. No one left, Ellen. So you commanded the audience. So Kathy had to leave, but
Broke them all in.
yeah.
Thank you.
No, great. Thank you very much. And
Wonderful.
we'll be in touch
Just
soon.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, John. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone.
Okay. All right. Take care, buddy. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.